really careful, but I kind of was astonished that I didn't get it before we knew about it, because up until like March, I think New York shut down on March 13th. March 12th, I did an event at the Strand with Ben Ketcher. So nobody was in more swarms of people than I was before it happened. Millions of people on the subway, in the street, in restaurants, in museums. But since then, I've had to have a few tests to do certain things. And I have to say I wasn't very worried that I had it. I don't know why. But I mean, every time someone called to tell me I was negative, I mean, the first time, actually the line producer of Pretend City called, and he said, I got your test results, you're negative. I said, I knew that, Josh. And he said, how did you know that? And I said, because my entire life people have been saying to me, Fran, you're so negative. So I was aware that I would be negative. I am still negative.
Are you predisposed to worrying about health and infection?
You know, I've always been very, I don't know what the word is, very careful about touching things. For instance, I can and have thousands of times, I've never touched a single thing in the New York City subway system, ever. And usually I'm by myself on the subway, but a few times, I remember many years ago, going on the subway with someone, and he said to me, when we got out, he said, you didn't touch anything. And I said, no. And the truth is, if I dropped the Hope Diamond on the floor of a subway car, I'd leave it there. I say, well, you know, it's just the Hope Diamond. But I've seen, of course, seen people pick things up from this floor. I, at least once, was sitting across from a woman with a baby, and I forget what you call it, the pacifier fell out of the baby's mouth. The woman picked it up, wiped it off on her shirt, and put it back in the baby's mouth. I really thought one of two things is going to happen to that baby. Either he's going to drop dead right now, or he'll live to be 1,000,000 years old, because he's just been exposed to every germ and virus on the planet Earth.
So you know, the shortages of like toilet paper and paper towels early on, and the continuing shortage of disinfecting wipes, the food lines, the unemployment, the people losing their homes because of the pandemic. It really has gotten me thinking, among other things, about my parents who came of age during the Depression and what they went through and how that imprinted itself on them. And I feel like there's things about them now that I understand that I didn't before. Why they always thought that something like that could happen any second. Do you know what I mean? Your parents were probably the same generation as my parents. Have you been thinking about that too?
Yes, actually, my parents are not alive. Are yours?
No, they're not. So I can't talk to them about this.
No, my parents grew up during the Depression. My father's family was extremely poor. And so I actually have many habits of someone who grew up during the Depression. Because someone once said to me, why do you shut the light out every time you walk out of the room?
Yes.
And I said, because my father made us do that.
Yes.
You know, and so I retained these habits, but my parents didn't grow up during a plague, so I don't have that to fall back on.
You've always lived alone by choice. How is living alone feeling during the pandemic when everybody's feeling kind of isolated?
Well, it's still, you know, seems to me to be by far the best choice. I mean, I cannot understand how people who do not live alone have stood this last 10 months, you know, because the only upside of, you know, being, you know, having to stay in my apartment is at least there was no one else there. And I would find that unbearable. I mean, truly unbearable. So there are people that I know at the very beginning, this guy I know, this friend of mine sent me, you know, like $1 million worth of orchids, saying these are to keep you company. And I thought, really? I mean, thank you. They're beautiful, but I keep myself company.
Do you ever get lonely?
You know, truthfully, I really have never get lonely. I mean, I certainly can say that there are specific people that I've missed in my life numerous times, you know, some very grievously. But a kind of abstract loneliness, no.
This new series is the second time Scorsese has documented you as a public speaker. Your friends, how did you become friends with Scorsese?
You know, I don't neither Marty nor I really know. I always say that, I must have met Marty at a party because I can't think where else I would have met him. And also because I spent, so much of my life going to parties. And Marty has gone to fewer parties, hence Marty has made more movies than Fran has written books. But, I feel like I did notice at some point that whenever I saw Marty at a party, I would spend most of the evening talking to Marty. We both have such a strong connection to New York that, in fact, when I made my deal with Marty for public speaking, we had the meeting. When the meeting was over, Marty said, okay, here's the deal. We don't leave Manhattan. And we shook hands, and that was the deal. We never had any kind of contract or anything. So in Pretend It's a City, we did go to Queens. Something Marty talked about as if we were going to Afghanistan. Remember, we have to go to Queens, friend. Queens. You know where this place is? And even though, of course, Marty has made movies all over the world, he doesn't take to that kindly, having to leave New York. And for instance, I happen not to have left New York for maybe a month before the shutdown. So I actually have not left New York for almost a year.
You strike me as someone who is resolutely yourself. You know who you are. You don't worry about changing yourself to be more popular or to please other people. You've been described as an iconoclast. Are you always comfortable within yourself?
Yes, I'm always surprised that people, adults, look to other people, even for things like haircuts. I just never thought about it. I don't know why. But that was true even when I was a little kid. I don't have a habit of comparing myself to other people. So there is an upside to that, which is that I would say that the luckiest thing for me about being me is how relatively, and I stress the word relatively, free of envy I am. Because to envy someone, you have to compare yourself to them. And so I really don't do that. And so the few times in my life I felt, deeply envious, the feeling was so repellent to me that I thought, God, this must be what it's like to be these people who are constantly envious of other people. And whenever people express that to me, or I wish I, had that thing that guy had, or I always say, if you're comparing yourself to another person like that, like, I wish I had that house, you have to understand, you have to be that person. You have to have everything else they have, so that, do you want to be that other person? So that I just never have felt that.
You grew up in a suburb in New Jersey, and you say that you were raised by your parents to be a wife. That did not work out that way.
It did not work out for them. It worked out great for me.
Yeah. When you looked around you and you looked at the adults in your neighborhood when you were growing up, and particularly when you looked at the women, what did you see?
Truthfully, I just felt in general, I was born in 1950. So I have to stress the end of 1950. So I'm younger than you think. So this was kind of the heyday of this kind of thing. I also had a mother who was pretty comfortable with that for herself. So that it wasn't, some people that I know that are my age had mothers who were like visibly bristling at that, but that was not my mother. So, in a sense that I didn't believe my parents or believe the world I was in, I just, for some reason, managed to internally separate myself from it so that I was able to have, by the way, truly a pretty happy childhood. I really enjoyed my childhood. Partially that's because I'm very suited to being a child. I'm really suited to being a child. A lot of the problems that I have in my life now, and didn't have if I was 8, I think 8-year-olds don't have to pay property taxes. Why do I? the being taught to cook and you have to do, this, you have to do that. My parents were both profoundly conventional people. So that I remember once saying, when I have a sister, and that's the whole family. My mother, my father, me, and my sister. So I remember once saying when I was about 10 years old or something, why doesn't Daddy have to help with the dishes? And my father said, if I wanted to do dishes, I would have had 2 daughters.
Whoa, he wasn't joking?
No, not at all. And I remember that, and this is, something like 60 years ago, but I don't remember feeling surprised to hear him say that, or angry that he said that. That was just the way the world that I lived in was. I was not, as a child, like rebellious against that, like, why can't I do this? I mean, a little girl in the 1950s, like I was told all the time that was the reason you couldn't do things. Why can't I do this? You're a girl. Oh, that was the answer.
What did you want to do that your parents said you couldn't do because you were a girl?
I don't even remember. I just remember hearing it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like a lot of girls, like, for instance, a lot of girls, women my age, remember not being able to play sports and stuff like that. Believe me, that was the upside for me. The upside was that I was not expected, to play, sports. So I never thought, like, why can't I join Little League? Okay, like, thank goodness I didn't have to join Little League. So in that way, I would say, like, well, I don't remember exactly what I couldn't do, but there were a lot of things I couldn't do, and that was the reason you couldn't do it. And for instance, when I was young, girls took home ec in school, starting in like the 4th or 5th grade. Boys took shop. Now, I'm not saying I want to take shop. I didn't, but I don't want to take home ec either. We had to sew, we had to cook. These are both things I still can't do. And I don't want to do them. So I got in trouble because we had to make in home ec, we had to make an apron. There might be girls who don't even know what an apron is. And congratulations. My mother had an apron wardrobe. My mother had dozens of aprons. So that we had to make an apron, which was a garment we'd be wearing in the kitchen when we cooked for our husbands. And it's a pretty simple sewing job, but it was beyond me. So I taped mine together with Scotch tape and then got caught doing that. Because, of course, when the teacher picked it up, the tape fell off. So that, I didn't want to do these things, and I either didn't do them and got in trouble, or did them poorly or got in trouble. But I didn't think, let me lead a movement against this. I was never that kind of person. I'm still not. I've never been a political activist. I'm too lazy to be an activist. I'm not the kind of person who did that. Very often now, people who are young thank me for my former activism, which, thank you for fighting for gay marriage. And I always say, I didn't fight for gay marriage. I never even thought about gay marriage. Gay marriage is not even a combination of words that came into my mind until people started talking about it. I didn't fight for it. Don't thank me. Thank someone else.
So you were kind of different as a kid when you were growing up. You wanted to go your own way. You had your own thoughts. You've always been yourself, and yourself is often oppositional and unique. Did that bother you ever as a kid that you didn't? I mean, you're such a paradox. Like, on the one hand, you always go your own way. You ended up being president of one of your high school classes. That struck me as so odd, because I can't imagine you being interested in student government, even though I know you follow politics now, but that's different than student government. And so, like, you're the president of one of your classes, and then you're expelled from the school. It's like one paradox after another. Explain.
Well, I mean, the difference is that the kids elect to be president, and the headmaster threw me out.
Got it. Yes, that's a good explanation.
I mean, this class I was the president of had literally 12 people in it. Okay, so I could believe I could be the president of the United States if there are only 12 people in the United States. So that I wasn't interested in student government. I don't. This is a private girls' school that I went to for like 15 minutes before they threw me out. So that's where I was elected president. And then the headmaster of that school threw me out. The official reason he threw me out was he said I was a terrible influence on the other girls, and I was usurping his power. Whatever that meant, I have no idea. And I don't know what kind of power. I mean, it's kind of a sad thing that the headmaster of a girls' school thinks he has a lot of power, but and that's what happened. So I always felt that I was punished for things unfairly. In other words, like I didn't do. In other words, when I got thrown out of school, for years after, people say, "What did you do?" And I know I was expected to say, I started a revolution. I set fire to the gym. But I really didn't do anything. And I really think that what I got expelled for was what my mother used to call that look on your face. So,
as in wipe that look off of your face?
Yes, wipe that look off your face. So I think, and by the way, I was unaware of this look on my face. So that, it's like people very often say to me, "You never smile in photographs. Why don't you smile?" And I always say, "I think I am smiling." Why are you sneering? I think I'm smiling. So that there is some kind of disconnect between apparently the look and the way I think I feel.